WHO, tapi di belakang saya ini masih ada puluhan kasus yang terlihat curang begitu. Kalau
Hello and good afternoon from Jakarta. Welcome to FPCI Public Debriefing on Survey of ASEAN Peoples Perceptions on China, India, Japan, and USA. I am Akbar and I will be the master ceremony of today's event. This public event is brought to you by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia. Today we are pleased to have over 500 registrants from 47 countries that are registering to join with us virtually. In 2023, FPCI, in collaboration with the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, ERIA, conducted a regional survey titled Survey of ASEAN People Perception on China, India, Japan, and the US, which you can access through this link, ASEANsperceptionsurvey.com, or scan to the barcode that's shown on the screen. Following the survey release, this public debriefing aims to inform the wider public over the survey result, as well as bringing together experts from Southeast Asia alongside with experts from China, India, Japan, and the USA to delve into the survey result. Without further ado, to begin with, let us invite Dr. Dino Patijalal, the founder and chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, to deliver his opening remarks first. Dr. Dino, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Akbar. Good afternoon from Jakarta, and I want to welcome all of you to the public debriefing on survey of ASEAN People's Perception on China, India, Japan, and United States. Special greeting to my good friend Tetsuya-san Watanabe, president of ERIA, who is also our partner in the production of this very interesting survey. I also would like to greet our distinguished speakers and discussants from Malaysia, Cambodia, Thailand, as well as from the United States, Japan, India, and China. And special hello also to Dr. Sofwan from University of Indonesia, who is the lead author of this survey, and also Calvin, our Indo-Pacific specialist. Special thanks also to Dr. Sheila, Devi Michael, Molika San, Seksan Anantara Sirikiat, Professor Wei Ling, Dr. Pramesha Sahar, Dr. K. Koga, and Dr. Denny Roy for taking part in this discussion. I won't take long. Just want to say that, the reason why we decided to do this survey is in the circuits, we're always hearing words, code words like coercion, right? Coercive behaviors, trust, intervention, conditionality, cooperation, and so on and so on. And we use it so often in the academic circuit and also diplomatic circuits that at some point we needed to test how these words, these coded words, actually translate on the ground. So we decided to do this survey of ASEAN people perceptions on China, India, Japan, and United States. Basically, ASEAN's dialogue partners. And I know there's been questions from countries that were not included in the survey. Why not us? Why not us? And certainly it does not mean that they are belittled, but really we can't do more than 4 countries. It's just going to be too complicated. But also because these 4 countries, India, China, United States, and Japan, we choose them because of their political, economic, and strategic significance and influence on the region. And this is particularly true with the initiatives that they have undertaken in our part of the world. And service level observation shows a positive relationship with major powers, but I think it would be interesting to dive into what Southeast Asians actually think of these 4 countries, and especially to capture their nuanced perceptions, which turned out to be a lot more complicated than we originally thought. And I think understanding these nuanced perceptions across various issues would definitely help policymakers in fostering better relationships in the future. And we made sure when we design these questionnaires, we address issues that were most frequently cited in the relationship between countries in the Indo-Pacific. Issues like trust, influence, coercion, intervention, conditionality, concerns, reliability, comfort level, confidence, and others. So this is why I think that the survey is very interesting and provide very useful guideline for us who wish to understand the region. And I want to highlight that the survey captures the perspectives of diverse groups across ASEAN societies, from officials, business communities, civil society organizations, academics, and students. And this explains, in our view, that the wider report is comprehensive in reflecting public sentiment and patterns regarding the 4 partners and their roles in the region. I also think it is interesting the fact that the survey captured public perceptions on regional initiatives, on China's BRI, on Japan's ODA, on the American IPAF, and India's Act East policy. We also asked them about Quad and AUKUS, as well as possible NATO expansion in the region. So this will be discussed by Pak Sofwan in his presentation, and I'm sure you will find the findings quite interesting. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for joining our discussions, and let's begin now. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks, Dr. Dino. And before we begin the discussion, let us also invite Mr. Tetsuya Watanabe, President of ERIA, to deliver his opening remarks. Mr. Watanabe, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Padino Paticharal, founder of Chairman of FPCI, my good friend, Pak Sofwan, and distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from Jakarta. It is my great honor and privilege to welcome all of you to this important event organized by FPCI. I would like to congratulate Dr. Dino and his team on the publication of this interesting and important survey. ERIA is very proud to be part of this timely and significant study. This collaboration marks a deepening of ERIA's partnership with FPCI, and we look forward to continuing our cooperation to serve the betterment of people in ASEAN. We are living in very challenging and uncertain times, but ASEAN is one of the few bright spots to drive global economic growth and provide peace and the security and stability in the Indo-Pacific. In the years to come, ASEAN will play a very critical role in the global and regional landscape, achieving sustainable and inclusive growth, economic development, fostering new and young entrepreneurs, facilitating innovation, and addressing imminent climate and environment crisis. This is why this survey, conducted by FPCI in collaboration with ERIA, holds significant importance. The survey looks into the perception of ASEAN people with dialogue partners, US, China, Japan, and India. These 4 countries play a critical role in ASEAN's economic, political, and cultural spheres. Few studies have comprehensively examined the perspective and perception of ASEAN people, and this survey aims to gauge the assessment of ASEAN's relationship with these 4 countries in different sectors, from economic, social culture, and political security, as well as various cooperation initiatives proposed by these external partners. Understanding these perceptions is crucial for maintaining ASEAN's strengths. Furthermore, this study is also critical for these 4 countries' policymakers to gain insights into Southeast Asian perspectives, enabling them to carefully navigate their engagement with this region. I hope the findings of this survey will serve as a valuable resource and input for all stakeholders, including government leaders, business executives, civil society, and beyond. We also envision the survey results will contribute to designing the foreign policy strategies of Southeast Asian countries' government and dialogue partners. I very much look forward to listening to today's discussion. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Watanabe. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, allow me to invite our moderator, Mr. Calvin Ko, the Director of FPCI Research and Analysis. Pak Calvin, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Akbar. Thank you, Pak Dino. Thank you, Professor Tetsuya. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the public debriefing on the survey of FPCI and ERIA of Southeast Asian perceptions on Japan, China, India, and the United States. Before we continue on our panel discussion today, I would like to welcome Dr. Sofwan Albana, FPCI Fellow and also the lead author of the survey, to present the finding of the survey. Dr. Sofwan, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Pak Calvin, and thank you very much to Pak Dino, Watanabe Sensei, as well as our speakers today. Really happy to see all of you here to start the discussion on the findings of the FPCI survey. I think it is a very good opportunity, since geopolitical tension is still in the air, and a lot of discussions, a lot of academic and non-academic deliberations on how the geopolitical tension, the rivalry between great powers are affecting the region. And often missing in that discussion is how actually the people of ASEAN sees these different partners in their own eyes. So this is the survey, which is then conducted by FPCI with the support of ERIA, and we managed to complete this last year, and we hope that it will continue to be an annual survey, so we can monitor the development and the evolution of the perception of ASEAN people. Let's start with the general overview of the findings, and hopefully we can take some insights from here. So this is an annual FPCI survey. We developed it from the previous 3 surveys, which focus mainly on China, but then we see the importance of looking at the perception of ASEAN people towards different important countries. As Pak Dino has already mentioned, we focus on four, mainly because of the technical limitations, but also because of the importance of these four countries: the United States of America, China, Japan, and India. We try to examine the different aspects of relationship between ASEAN and these four countries. The survey is employing a purposive sampling. So we look for respondents in 5 categories of respondents in 11 Southeast Asian countries, 10 ASEAN member countries, and added with Timor-Leste, who is in the process to be a full member of ASEAN. And in the 5 categories includes 4 elite category, which is the academia, business sector, civil society, and government officials. And the other category is the future leaders category, which is the student. We try to represent the distribution based on country and the size of the population as well. But we try to capture as nuanced as possible by including samples from these different countries and categories. And we will see later that the distribution is quite representative. So we then identify the results, the answers by the respondents by classifying them into different categories of questions and answers. Let's move to the next part. So this survey is the next level upgrade from the previous surveys, which is known as the ASEAN-China survey. And this year, we start by expanding it to 4 countries. And hopefully we can continue this year also. Next. You can get all of the reports in the website. So the as we already discussed, a lot of discussions about Southeast Asia and how it is becoming one of the most important hotspot in global politics today, with its proximity to different global players, important global powers and great powers. But these discussions often miss the voice of the people inside that. Many often assumes the homogeneity within the state. So we try to understand, and assess the perspectives of the people of ASEAN by asking them directly if they are included in this 5 categories of sample that we decide. We then, based on the answers, try to identify patterns and capture the attitudes of the different segments of ASEAN people. And based on that, we hope to provide reliable basis, because foreign policy begins at home, because foreign policy also influenced by the people's perception. We believe that it will contribute to the formation of evidence-based policy recommendation. We try to provide the basis for a more sound recommendation in the region, in ASEAN's relationship with the four countries, for partners identified and surveyed in this survey. Let's move. So this is the process, yeah, the methodology. We do this through online survey by identifying a sample. We have a huge database of potential respondents, which we send them. We identify them based on professions and their experience. And based on that database, we ask them to fill the survey. And from that, we collect the data. We send to 5 categories of respondents that you already heard before. Let's move. So these are the total of respondents. We managed to get 1,722 respondents distributed quite well in across 11 countries. Let's move. The distribution in terms of a category is also quite representative. Let's move. So now going to the core of the findings, I'll move quickly in this 11 points. Let's start with number 1. Let's move. We can see an interesting pattern here where 3 countries, each of these countries, China, Japan, and the USA, are seen as most prominent in 3 different separate dimensions. China is most prominent in economic issues, Japan is most prominent in socio-cultural, and USA is most influential, most prominent in terms of political and security. But it is also interesting to note that Chinese presence is also quite strong in both political and socio-cultural. Let's move. So the second point is, it is interesting that we can associate each of the country with one interesting characteristic. Yeah? For example, Japan is seen as the most favorable. The view generally is very positive across different sectors, despite seen as being most influential in social cultural, but in security issues as well as in economic issues, the view towards Japan is relatively positive, and the view towards Japan as in general is also generally positive. USA is seen in the survey as the go-to partner for security, probably because its involvement, its commitment, its presence in the region is seen as crucial to manage the great power rivalry. However, at the same time, how far and how involved, that also raise concern. So its presence or its absence is seen influentially shaping the regional security situation. China is seen as the future. When asked about the most reliable partner today, Japan is still seen as the most favorable. But when talking about the future, most of the respondents expects that China will have an increasing role. But at the same time, there are also China also raised a lot of concerns. India, on the other hand, relatively feature less prominently in different sectors. Let's move. So these are the general situation on each country. Japan is seen as favorite among these global powerhouses and consistently outperforming others in terms of favorability. And all positive words are generally attributed to Japan. This is pretty much related to its long-standing approach towards ASEAN, which is heart-to-heart approach, listening to ASEAN. People in ASEAN tend to not doubting Japan's commitment for ASEAN centrality, etc. China is one of the most interesting. It gives a lot of opportunities and potentials for ASEAN, seen as a potential partner for the future, dependable economic partner. However, it also creates and raises concerns. USA is still seen as one of the most important, or even the most important partner in terms of security, because it is its presence is significantly shapes the region. India ranks significantly lower than others across various sectors, but is increasingly becoming an important player in the region. Let's move. So we go to more details here, where generally education, research is and academic exchanges are the most satisfactory ones. Economic issues like trade and investment, apart from the USA, which focus on defense and security, and it is consistent with the general finding on the image of countries. China, Japan, and India listed economic, socio-cultural and economic cooperation in the most satisfactory ones, while the United States, apart from education, research, and academic exchanges, also put defense and security there. The respondents put defense and security there. Let's move. And this is the least satisfactory cooperation, as consistent with the concerns on China, mainly on security issues. Defense and security is the least satisfactory, with cybersecurity there. With India, it is environment and cybersecurity. With Japan, it's the number is quite low, showing that the satisfaction is actually quite high, but defense and security and transnational crime, cybercrime is there. In the USA, the least satisfaction is in immigration and borders. Yeah, we understand it's always difficult to get the US visa. Transnational crime, and then defense and security. Let's move. This is in terms of the perception of ASEAN people towards US and China's role in handling different important issues in the region. The Myanmar crisis, Taiwan Strait, war in Ukraine, Lancang Mekong cooperation, South China disputes, and Korean Peninsula. We can compare the result here, in which the China was seen as counterproductive, mostly in the issue of Taiwan Strait. In terms of Myanmar crisis, the number is quite split, but many seen it positive. In war in Ukraine, Lancang Mekong cooperation is more positive. But in South China Sea dispute, we see that China was seen as counterproductive. Let's move. So it seems that when the issues are affecting ASEAN member countries, they are more critical. In the same question is asked on the roles of US in handling these issues.
Tunggu dah, tak lama.
And we see this pattern where US is seen as counterproductive in Ukraine, probably because it somehow push ASEAN member countries to side in the conflict, which is seen as counterproductive. And also on the upcoming permanent US military presence in the Philippines, which is seen as counterproductive by most of the respondents. Let's move. Which initiatives are viewed most favorably? It's interesting to see that for Japan, the ODA, the Asia-Japan Investing for the Future initiative, and the ASEAN Integration Fund, Japan ASEAN Integration Fund, is seen as the most favorable. Over 70% of respondents see these initiatives as positive. Let's go to the next slide. Which initiatives are least known? So the least known initiative across all countries are the India's Act East policy and global civilization initiative by China. This is interesting because China promotes the global civilization initiative quite extensively, but probably because it is overshadowed by the Belt and Road Initiative, which is more popular and recognized only around 50 more than 55% respondents say that they never heard these initiatives. So compared to, for example, in Timor-Leste, compared to other initiatives, Belt and Road initiative is quite popular. Let's move. So this is the in terms of the most trusted and least trusted partner. Japan is the most trusted in different countries. We pick this Brunei and Timor-Leste because Brunei is the most trusting to Japan with 78%, while Timor-Leste is interestingly less than half of the respondents, 42%, still higher than others, but less than other countries. Let's move. It's interesting to see that not every ASEAN countries see China as the least trustworthy, while in general China is seen as the least trustworthy with 43%. In Laos, USA is least trustworthy, together with India somehow. In Brunei, the least trustworthy is USA. In Timor-Leste, it's not so. It's India somehow, probably because not so many exposure there. In the Philippines, China and USA, but the gap is not that high. Vietnam shows very high distrust towards China with 7%. So if we look at the regional level, China is the least trustworthy, but the picture is more nuanced if we look at each countries. We have different situation in different countries. Let's move. In Indonesia also, this is interesting to see that USA is still seen as the least trustworthy. China is more trustworthy than the USA. Japan is the most trustworthy because only 7% answer as the least trustworthy. But it's interesting to see this in Indonesia. Let's move. Who causes the most concern? Well, China consistently there, with the United States usually as the second. Let's move. Who is the most comfortable partner to work with? Well, Japan consistently with the view on the most favorable partner is also the most comfortable. And the other questions also see this: the most dependable partner is China, and then Japan, and then China. The most respectable and credible partner is Japan, and then United States. And go-to partner for quality investment is again Japan, and then China. So Japan tops this trust and confidence aspect in the relationship. Let's move. So in general, Japan is seen as the most favorable. It's most comfortable. It is most trusted. It is go-to for quality infrastructure. It is most consistent supporter of ASEAN centrality, most loyal partner in supporting ASEAN initiative, most aligned with ASEAN principles, most compliance with international law. But when asked about the most relevant partner for ASEAN future, China, although the gap is not so high, is seen as the choice, as the option, 41 to 34. Let's move. We also find that India is less prominent to Southeast Asian. Its visibility is still very limited in all different dimensions. Let's move. It's interesting when we ask specific initiatives like India, Myanmar, Thailand highway, the response is also quite different from Myanmar and Thailand. The project is popular in Myanmar with 72%. In Thailand, it's less popular, although more than half still see that positively and know that positively. Probably because most of the projects are in Myanmar, so it's more well known there. Let's move. There are different responses towards AUKUS in different countries. Indonesian respondents see AUKUS as undermining stability of the region, but Filipino respondents see this more positively. Vietnam and Cambodian respondents mostly offer no opinion, but when they have opinion, mostly see that positively as strengthening security in Vietnamese, but for Cambodians, it was the opposite. So while it is important to look at the regional level, the perception at the aggregate level in the region, it is also interesting to see the situation in each country, which is often different. And we can understand, and we can guess generally why Vietnam and Cambodia are different because of their different relationship with China, for example. Let's move. Now we also ask about their response towards NATO aspirations to expand in the region, including by opening NATO office, and also about their naval operations. I think mostly clear that they oppose an increase in NATO's naval operations in the region because it's counterproductive, but they are more positive in seeing the office opening, as long as they are not expanding the military operations here, probably. Let's move. But we also see the difference in different countries. So in general, it is important. This survey is. We hope that this survey is going to be an important contribution in the discussion in understanding the dynamics in the region, because Southeast Asia is evolving into a new epicenter with multiple opportunities, but also flashpoints of geopolitical tensions. It's also interesting to see that there are quite diversity within ASEAN, in which, while we see general patterns, Japan is seen positively, China is seen as the future, US security presence is seen as important, India is relatively less visible. It is important to see the diversity of ASEAN by understanding the perceptions in each ASEAN countries. So from there, we see that what can we do from this research? I think many of these countries can use this as a baseline to develop a more productive policy. For example, Japan is seen as the most favorable, but Japan should see this not as a given thing. It is something that Japan still needs to maintain and to strive, because there are impression that China is the future. Japan needs to maintain its current strategy and even expand it to ensure that this positive evaluation will continue and Japan remain seen positively in the future. China, while seen as important partner for the future and economic partner, a lot of concerns about security issues. China needs to be more open. China needs to learn from Japan in making more heart-to-heart diplomacy, in listening more to its neighbor, in how to ensure that its power does not raise concerns and conflict. The US can expand its engagement beyond security issues, and India must explore new avenues to enhance its acceptance and contribution to the region. I think that's all from me as the opening of the discussion. And you can find the full report of the survey in the ASEAN China survey.com and ASEAN Perceptions survey.com for the latest survey. Thank you very much. And I'm returning this to Calvin.
Thank you, Dr. Sohwan. Again, I would like to invite all of you to check the website ASEAN Perceptions survey.com. Again, ASEAN Perceptions survey.com. In that website, you're not only to see and able to download the digital report, but you can also see the full data. We provide the full data, naked data, in all layers. You can see it only for country basis. You can see it in categorical basis. So I invite you to visit the website. Thank you, Dr. Sohwan. You have present it and explore all the findings of the survey, and let's discuss it. I would like to welcome the three panelists of today. We have Dr. Sheila Devi Michael from Malaysia, Head of Department of International and Strategic Studies at the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences at the University of Malaya. Ibu, good afternoon in Bali, good afternoon in Malaysia. Next, I would like to welcome Ibu Molika Sun, Deputy Director of the Mekong Center for Strategic Studies Asian Vision Institute at Cambodia. Good afternoon to you. And the last speaker is Seksan Anastaris Rikat, researchers at the International Studies Center from Thailand. Welcome to you, welcome, and thank you for joining us. Now, I want to start with a very simple questions. How do you see it, the survey result? There are several key findings that has been presented. How do you respond to it? And how do you see this has an implications to power politics in the region way forward? Maybe now I would like first go to the mainland ASEAN, to Cambodia first, Molika, and then I go to Seksan, and then last I'll go to you, Dr. Celia. Ibu Molika, please share your thoughts about this.
Thank you, Kevin, and good afternoon to everyone. So thank you, for providing a very clear explanation to the way result. So,
sorry, ma'am, I think your voice is a little bit little. Can you voice up? Yeah. Can you speak louder?
Because of my mic, it doesn't work.
There you go. I think this is way much better.
Okay now?
Please,
okay.
please.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So, in overall, I find the survey result very useful, not only for researchers in Cambodia, but for the whole region, and especially the 4 countries that are the focus of our research. And what I learned from this is that I can say that Japan and China are the most prominent partner in terms of economic and socio-cultural cooperation, while the US is the most prominent in politics and security cooperation. And last but not least, India, influence in the regions is relatively limited, except its active role in research and education exchange. And I also find like how to say, maybe satisfied with the diverse group of respondents. So you have like 5 different groups. That's why the result of the survey is accurate. For example, there's one point that said that Philippines and Vietnam were the least trusting partner of China. I think this is partly because of their conflict with China in the South China Sea. But I think maybe I have 2 suggestions for the survey. Number one is most of the survey result is actually database, but it lacks explanations or implication. For example, when I read one point that focuses on Laos, the relationship between Laos and US, and it said that Laos plays security cooperation with the US as the 13th most satisfactory aspect, unlike other ASEAN member states. So what come to my mind is that why is it so? Maybe I missed like background information about this, but I cannot find the explanation why this happened. So maybe we can add more explanation or implications to data if appropriate. And another suggestion may be, why don't we have another group which is the general public? So for the diverse group of respondents, you have the government officials, scholar, researcher, businessman, civil society representative, and student. But this group of respondents engage more or less in the story or in what happening with China, India, Japan, and USA. But for those who don't really engage in this circle, maybe can have more candid opinion toward this 4 country. I'm not sure whether my words here is clear, but I'm happy to provide more clarification on this later. Yeah, but overall, this is my perspective toward the survey result. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask continued question to you, ma'am. We find in our survey that Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos, or even Myanmar, has a different opinion and thinking about the four countries. Comparing to maritime ASEAN, Indonesia, Malaysia is always mirroring each other, right? And somehow Singapore also mirroring with what Malaysian and Indonesian think, and some issues with Thailand as well. But in ASEAN mainland, not every questions the countries there, the Mekong countries has the same opinion. Can you tell me more about the outlook of foreign policy outlook, the differences outlook between Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos, so we can have a better understanding the dynamics amongst in the Mekong countries, please?
Thank you. This question is how to say hard to answer, but also important. So from my humble knowledge and experience about the Mekong region, I think the CLV country, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, has different relationship with the four countries, or in specific with the US, for example. So, of course, if we talk about the economic side, the US is one of the most important trading partner for Cambodia. But somehow our relationship is spoiled by the politic agenda, for example, human rights and democracy. But if you look at Vietnam, the relationship between Vietnam and the US, it's not that difficult compared to Cambodia, and it's proved by the recent upgrade of the diplomatic relationship of the two countries from strategic partnership to a comprehensive strategic partnership. And the partnership itself doesn't cover only politics and security agenda, but also on other economic and socio cultural area, for example, like science, technology, trade and investment, environment, energy, and health cooperation. So I think it's really depend on the previous and the current relationship between each CLV country and the external partner, the four external partner. Yes.
Thank you so much. Now I move to you, Mas Eksan. Thank you for joining us from Thailand. How do you see it from Bangkok perspective about the survey?
Thank you for your kind invitation, Park Calvin. May I first start by congratulating the FPCI and ERIA for making this survey happen. Now the FPCI has become the king of people survey in Southeast Asia. Congratulations on that. I'd like to make a disclaimer that views expressed here are totally personal. They do not reflect those of my affiliations. I have only 2 points. I think this survey actually reflects the characteristics of ASEAN. First, I think ASEAN is able to exercise its agency towards different dialogue partners. Although there may be different levels of favorability, but I would say that ASEAN totally welcomes for countries to engage with ASEAN at the regional and national level. I think this is clear. And this is evidence. This survey is an evidence that ASEAN has a balance and we are not taking side. We are not kind of any player's backyard. So I think that's kind of reflection that I see from the survey. Second, it seems that there is commonality, although part of one presentation says there is kind of no commonality, but I found one, that soft engagement, including educational and academic activities, are always and mostly welcome to engage with ASEAN. When it comes to political security issues, you will see that the survey says many ASEAN countries are reluctant in doing so. For example, the question on Quad and AUKUS, many respondents say there is no opinion. When it comes to BRICS and SCO, many respondents say neutral. When it comes to NATO, many respondents say neutral and opposed. So I think this is clear that soft engagement is always welcome and desirable here. Second point, I think is more about recommendations. First, I think there's a message to the FPCI. I think there is a kind of need for improving. I think this is the first kind of the attempt to do so. But I would recommend you to engage other dialogue partners as well, such as the Republic of Korea. And this year we celebrate the 35 years of ASEAN-ASEAN relations. Australia, and I think the ASEAN Summit is taking place in Australia. EU, perhaps, I think. So it can be kind of the survey of dialogue partners. I think that can be a kind of the, make this survey kind of more valuable for that. Second point, I think this is a message for our ASEAN countries like ourselves. I think we should emphasize that we have principles and we are rule-based, because apart from ASEAN Charter, we also have the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation that opens relationship with many countries. We also have the South-Fan, not South-Fan, but South-Fan is Zone of Peace, Freedom and Neutrality Treaty. We also have the Southeast Asian Nuclear Weapon Free Zone Treaty. I think these are kind of the wisdom of our ancestors that they leave to us, that, okay, they want to set tone for ASEAN to manage situation, especially during the geopolitical conflict. I think this is clear, and we have to re-narrate principles and kind of narrative inside these ideas on why we have this. And I think this is still relevant for today's world. Third point, perhaps we should add more. I think there should be more questions about sub-regional cooperation. I found Mekong, which is for Mekong Lanchan cooperation, but perhaps if you can do some kind of the more questions on sub-regional cooperation, including ACMEX, Mekong cooperation, BIMPIAGA, I think that would be very, very useful, because some people or some scholars, I heard many narratives saying that there's a kind of the diverging views among continental and maritime ASEAN countries. But I would like to see whether that's correct or not, or kind of the level of the reality of that. Yeah, I think that would be very useful. I think last point, perhaps if I were dialogue partners, I may have a question to our ASEAN countries ourselves, that what actually you want us to do? What roles dialogue partners could play for the kind of the dialogue partners, I mean, as dialogue partners for regional issues? Because if you check the survey, it seems that we kind of have ideas on like that the superpowers role here are counterproductive on regional issues. So what is real, I mean, that kind of the roles that you want us to exercise? In that's kind of a question, but I have no answers here. So now I'd like to welcome for questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sextant. I think you give a very valuable comments, and also thank you for the recommendations. We duly noted your points. I'll get back to you after this. Now I would like to Ibu Sheila. Ibu, please tell me how Malaysians see, and how do you see it, the survey?
Good afternoon from Malaysia, representing University Malaya, the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. Thank you for this invitation, Calvin, and also to FPCI. And first of all, I'd like to applaud FPCI for initiating this survey, which significantly demonstrates the view of ASEAN people, the voices of ASEAN people, especially on these key players in the region. China, India, Japan, and also US, which just now Pak Dino said they are the dialogue partners, and therefore they are significantly important for us. And so from this survey, I would say that there has been sort of like an approach or a reception of towards, the reception being more positive towards Japan, and also least towards China. So I believe that this disparity, first of all, in my opinion, I think it's because of the concerns of ASEAN people, the lack of approach or efforts from China, especially in the issues that have been highlighted, especially the Myanmar crisis, the Taiwan Strait, and most importantly, the South China Sea dispute. compared to Japan, Japan has been more, more approachable, especially with its Fukuda doctrine, and it has, very much clear in its approach in maintaining peace and stability in the region, not only with ASEAN, but I think globally. So for Malaysia, I suppose all these four partners are important because Malaysia has this good friendship with China for more than 5 decades. So China has been Malaysia's largest trading partner, and also Malaysia is China's second largest trading partner in ASEAN. So for Malaysian, China is important. Japan is important because just recently our Prime Minister has visited Japan, and the relationship has gone beyond the conventional area where the focus is now more on communication and space. So of course the relationship between Malaysia and Japan, it has been positive as well. And with India, it is seen as the key player as well. Maybe least may not be as important as Japan and China, but for Malaysia, it always has this balanced approach because it wants all this mutual benefit with all these, counterparts in the region. And of course, we do see, the US being scoring quite low with everybody. But as for Malaysia, again, they may not be significantly, play that key player role with Japan, China, and India. But nonetheless, when it comes to political and security for Malaysia, US is also important. So from Malaysia's perspective, I would say that we have this balanced approach. But when everybody is important. And I also would like to highlight on civil society's feedback, where they are very much, not satisfied at all when it comes to the important issues, the regional issues on Myanmar, the way these countries are handling Myanmar crisis, the refugee crisis. So I think this is something that these dialogue partners have to pay attention to because these crises are very important. Especially when we talk about development progress in the region, we should not neglect this crisis because this involves the ASEAN people. So I leave it at that now, Kelvin.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. From the four countries, we can see the differences and also how we see it in the different issues as well. I think I would like to start to discuss more with one by one. I want to start with the United States. Sir Danny Roy, I think from your perspective, how do you see the survey results? We know that US is, based on the survey, is the go-to partner for security, but people also wondering the economic contents of the American partnership to the region. Please tell us more. How do you see the survey?
Yeah, audio check. You hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you very well.
Okay. From the U.S. point of view, the results are somewhat disappointing. It's not surprising to hear that the United States is still recognized and by some countries valued as an important security partner. But I can tell you that folks like me who study U.S. foreign policy, but don't necessarily influence U.S. foreign policy, have recognized for a long time that it's very important for the United States to go beyond simply having fruitful security partnerships with countries in Southeast Asia. We need to expand our involvement to add other elements besides simply the military and the geostrategic to the levers of influence that we can exercise in the region if we're going to support U.S. interests. So let me talk about three of those areas outside of military security partnerships where the United States has the opportunity to expand its influence and how it's doing so far. The first is support for ASEAN centrality. The United States government is committed to saying that it supports ASEAN centrality because there's no cost to saying this. there would be a cost to denying ASEAN centrality. But it's plain to see that mouthing support for ASEAN centrality does not prevent the United States from pursuing other relationships that do not necessarily first seek ASEAN's permission. We saw this with the Quad and AUKUS as well, where there was some opposition in Southeast Asia. Now, I'm happy to note that one of the results of your survey is that most of the respondents seem to be relatively comfortable with the Quad and AUKUS by now. It seemed like most of the respondents, that the most common response was something like, "I don't have an opinion." So the situation has gotten somewhat better. But Southeast Asians will certainly notice that while the United States says that ASEAN centrality is number one, there are competing interests that make the United States go around ASEAN centrality in some instances. A second area where the United States might be being watched, other than security partnerships, is in the attendance at important ASEAN meetings by high-level U.S. officials. I gather that Southeast Asians generally felt somewhat neglected during the recent Trump administration and believed that they would get more attention under the Biden administration. There are high hopes for the Biden administration. But maybe the strongest memory so far from the Biden administration is President Biden deciding not to attend the 2023 East Asian Summit, which was very disappointing to many in the region. So up until now, while there's still time, another part of a year for the Biden administration to correct this impression, I think the general impression in Southeast Asia is that there are high hopes that the Biden administration would do better in this respect, but the results have been generally disappointing, and that the amount of U.S. engagement in the Biden administration is about the same as under the Trump administration. The third area I want to mention outside of military and security relationships is U.S. economic leadership in the region and in Southeast Asia, the sub-region in particular. Again, folks like myself recognize that the United States needs to have an economic aspect of its Asia strategy. And folks like me feel that it was a serious blunder, strategic blunder on the part of the United States to abandon the Trans-Pacific Partnership, what is now the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. Something the United States was at the forefront of pushing, but then pulled out just before it was realized by our negotiating partners. The main cause of this is that both of the major political parties in the United States had problems with the United States joining what was then the TPP. The Democratic Party saw trade agreements, the United States entering into trade agreements as welcoming other countries taking American jobs. That's why they were against it. And the Republican Party, the other major party in the United States, which was traditionally pro-business, became a populist party in the last administration of Donald Trump. So therefore, both parties were opposed for their own reasons, United States joining TPP. And the Biden administration has attempted as best it can to compensate for the lack of U.S. membership in the CPTPP by putting forth, as you know, the Asia-Pacific Economic Framework beginning in May 2022, which is recognized, however, as a framework rather than a trade agreement. It's described by some as an invitation to negotiate, but lacking in much substance. Most notably, the IPEF does not offer access to U.S. markets. It does not offer a reduction in U.S. trade tariffs to potential Southeast Asian partners. Yet U.S. markets are generally more open to Southeast Asian countries than the reverse. So the problem here is what Southeast Asian governments want is asymmetrical tariff reduction by the United States, but the United States can't do this anymore because U.S. industrial capacity has declined to the point where letting in more imports would worsen U.S. deindustrialization, which Americans increasingly recognize as a long-term problem that must be addressed. Finally, I saw that the survey addressed U.S. reliability, as the U.S. didn't score well there. I have to say that the perception of U.S. unreliability will get a whole lot worse if Donald Trump is reelected U.S. president. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Danny, I would like to continue one question with you. In the recent Jakarta meeting of ASEAN, your government issued a joint leadership statement on cooperation of the AOIP. And in that statement, there's a very clear state that U.S. support the principles of inclusiveness of Indo-Pacific. And I would like to ask, how does American think about inclusivity? Because how do you interpret the inclusivity itself? Because in our side, inclusivity it's not excluding any power out of the regional order. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, the United States is struggling with the notion of inclusivity. I think in principle, the American version of it would be that the United States is happy to have strong partnerships with any country on earth that supports some basic principles upon which we think U.S. foreign policy is founded or should be founded, ideally. As opposed to maybe the ASEAN view is a little bit more expansive, that really anybody can be a friend, and to the point of a greater willingness, I would say, in your part of the world to put aside differences that might separate us, whereas Americans are more willing to put emphasis on the importance of dealing with the points of differences that might separate us for us to truly be friends.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to shift to India. Pramesha, thank you for joining us. India, in the survey, is included as less prominent in the region. I think we've been discussing in Jakarta meeting with you, Pramesha, about India needs to boost up their engagement to the region, and the survey says so also. How do you see the survey?
Thank you, Calvin. And I will actually reiterate what Denny said when we saw that how India is perceived in ASEAN. It was actually quite disappointing. But, the fact that which got my attention the most is the lack of awareness about Act East policy. I can understand, the moderate response on the trilateral highway because it has been an ongoing project for many years and it has faced a lot of hurdles. So the progress has not been as it was expected. But with regard to the lack of awareness about India's Act East policy, that was a little, I was a little taken aback by that. But I think when we've discussed this before, that whenever we talk about how India, about India's presence in Southeast Asia, it is generally to do with soft power. And that's why you see the social cultural aspect got a much higher ranking than, say, trade, investment. Another thing is also education and exchanges, especially, there are a lot of scholarship for ASEAN students now in IITs. And so, in those regards also, in terms of education and exchange, also there was a higher ranking. With defense and security, India is just stepping in that zone, especially with the deal with Philippines after that. So this is fairly a new venture at the moment. And given India's own Make in India campaigns and, how much that will take shape in the future depends. If such similar deals are struck with, say, Indonesia, Vietnam, then we can say that the ball is rolling forward. But if it just stops at Philippines, again, this is just a one-off thing. So it has to be seen as to how defense partnerships grows similarly on similar agreements is reached with countries like Indonesia and Vietnam as well. I think the third aspect is that with regards to the Act East policy also, I think the fact that the name has changed from Look East to Act East, but this is asked in many Indian circles also as to, is there any difference in the, in between the two policies which is seen? Because if we see the Look East phase 2 and phase 3, also it's very similar to what Act East talks about. Maybe Look East started off as an economic policy, but with with phase 2 and phase 3, it did have a political angle. We did see the attention getting expanded to East Asia and Oceania region as well. But I think the only difference now with Act East is that it is set to now become the pillar around which India's Indo-Pacific vision works around. So I think that is probably the only stark difference from Look East to Act East at the moment. And that's why probably this lack of awareness as to maybe people would be more familiar with the term Look East in Southeast Asia, if we are talking about. And within Act East, because it runs our Indo-Pacific vision, boosting relations with countries like Australia, Japan, those have taken precedence under the Act East rubric. So I think that can also be another reason why Southeast Asian nations feel that there has not been any stark change, or there has not been a jump start or a kickoff in the India-Southeast Asia relations in other aspects as well. So another, besides that, I think the areas, as you mentioned, where I think also India is doing well is digital economy, because if you see countries like Singapore, for example, UPI, which is our public, those cashless payment systems have been introduced in countries like that. So I think in those regards, also digital payments, digital infrastructure, India is doing well, and that is expanding to countries like Singapore, and it can, be extended to other countries in Southeast Asia. So that is another road which India is taking. But I think in terms of ASEAN centrality also, I would also, this is a question which I've asked, which goes on in mind, like most of the dialogue partners, we keep on stressing about ASEAN centrality, but we do not delve deep into what we actually mean by ASEAN centrality. It has just now become like a statement which is essentially occurring in all Indo-Pacific strategies. But I think dialogue partners in itself, we need to work out as to a common approach as to what actually we mean by ASEAN centrality, especially within the Indo-Pacific construct when we are talking about it. And the third aspect, which I actually would want, my ASEAN colleagues to answer, is when we talk about, because I saw we were in our survey also, it said that India has a limited role to play in the Myanmar crisis. But when we talk about the South China Sea dispute, when we talk about the Myanmar crisis, it is expected that these are discussed at the level of ASEAN. So when you are dialogue partners, what role do you think dialogue partners can play when you say we have a limited role in these issues? What is the role that dialogue partners can play in these sensitive disputes, which are, not only just affecting Southeast Asia, but it's affecting regional stability and peace as well? So whether it's trying to enforce law enforcement, what is the role that dialogue partners can play in these issues also is something which probably we need to look into, and probably if ASEAN countries discuss more about this would also help. So I'll stop there and I'll take any more questions and feedback if possible.
Thank you, Parmesha. I would like now, I have some questions, but due to the time limit, I would like to shift to China and also to Japan. I'll go to China first. Professor Wei-Ling, as you know, ASEAN and China has a very multidimensional, complex relationship. We cannot ignore the fact that we have a very not easy political security relationship, but have a very good economic relationship. And how do you see it, the survey result? Please tell us more.
Okay, thank you very much. Overall, thank you for having me inviting me to this event. And overall, the survey result is very helpful, I think, for Chinese policymakers, scholars, and the public to better understand the perceptions of ASEAN people on key issues of long-term interest to China, particularly against the background of changing geopolitical dynamics, the return of power politics, and the rise of populism. Well, the survey is conducted based on the assumption that the 4 partner states have key political, economic, and strategic significance for ASEAN. The same can be assumed about ASEAN's significance for the 4 partners. Take China as an example. In the past 3 decades and more, without the success of ASEAN-led regional cooperation processes, the ASEAN Plus 3, East Asia Summit, ARF, RCEP, etc., China could not have enjoyed a peaceful, prosperous, and friendly neighboring environment most needed for its social economic development and rapid rise. This is why ASEAN has been identified by Chinese leadership as a priority in China's diplomatic work. Nonetheless, as the report rightly points out, China has little information about what Southeast Asians really think about China and ASEAN-China relations. Hence, the survey can really help Chinese policymakers reassess and recalibrate China's policy towards ASEAN so as to improve mutual understanding and mutual trust for the nurturing of we feeling and for the long-term goal of community building. The key issue, as reflected by the survey, in current ASEAN-China relationship, I think, is trust. And indeed, the survey captures a nuanced and multifaceted perception on China and its cooperation with ASEAN, reflecting both positive sentiments and concerns. While China is deemed most relevant partner for the future of ASEAN, the most reasonable major power for Southeast Asia, it is also pinpointed as the least trusted partner by a significant 43% majority of respondents, and the top partner most likely to employ economic tools and coercive measures against ASEAN and AMS. Why so? I think the root cause is actually the rapid rise of China's economic power and overall national strength. It arouses both positive sentiments because China has been the growth engine for the region and shared its growth with ASEAN states. Its growth actually has paralleled the growth of China-ASEAN partnership and East Asia-wide regional integration after the Cold War. It is also the rapid rise of China that has, on the other hand, it is also the rapid rise of China that has continued to widen the gap of strength and increase power asymmetry between China and its neighbors. And that has caused concerns. So I think 3 points are the major reasons for the trust, maybe we can say a trust deficit. First is rapidly increasing power asymmetry plus geography. China is too big and too close, and you cannot move away your neighbor. There's a metaphor. If a big guy sits right next to you at an airplane, you naturally would feel uncomfortable. And if the guy continues to grow, you would naturally worry that he will encroach on your space. However, if the guy sits far away from you, you wouldn't worry that much, or you wouldn't even care. And then the theory of power asymmetry argues when the bigger player interacts with a smaller player, attention and sensitivity they feel about the interaction and the relationship is significantly different. The smaller player always pays far more attention and be far more sensitive about the relationship and about the interaction, while the bigger player far less so. Consequently, misperception arises. Power asymmetry leads to asymmetry of attention and sensitivity, and then to misperception, and then to grudges. So the smaller player tends to hold grudges against the bigger player, even without the awareness of the latter. The second reason is power competition. After the global financial crisis, there has been significant change in international power structure, featuring the rise of Global South, with ASEAN states included. What follows the structural change has been the shift of global strategic gravity toward the Pacific and East Asia. ASEAN proudly hosts East Asia Summit and sits at the center of regional cooperation mechanisms that have actually networked almost all major powers. And all major powers have increased their strategic investment in the region. Some strengthened military presence and security arrangements, which have interrupted the momentum of regional cooperation processes led by ASEAN and put regional stability and growth at risk. And so not only power competition itself, but also the narrative, which could become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the Western standards and Western narrative hegemony is at play here. As China has been identified by some Western powers as strategic rival, the other that they assume not only has the attention, but also the ability to challenge the US liberal hegemony, the power competition has been used specifically for zero-sum game between China and the US. And recently there has been an article that even tries to recategorize international groupings as the West, the Global South, and the East, and separate China from the Global South to further intensify and exacerbate the power competition. So we need to be really alert to such categorization and such narrative. And the third reason is nationalism, populism, and uncertainty, which we have witnessed after the global financial crisis and more recently in the past few years with the pandemic. So these, I believe, are the main reasons for the ASEAN perception, in particular, the trust problem between China and ASEAN. And then if I may continue, Kevin, I'm not sure how much time I have. So
you have last minute, so you can conclude there.
So if I may continue, the thing is how to improve trust. What approach could China take to nurture trust and to build friendship, to become a favorable country for Southeast Asian people? I think there are a few points. First of all, as you can see, that China is regarded as the most relevant and has the greatest economic influence among the four partners. So the first thing, and this is China's strength, and the strength lies in its sustained economic growth. And so the first thing is that China should sustain, first of all, its own growth and continue to share growth with regional countries, with ASEAN. And I think this is also the wish of ASEAN states, as we can see that people have positive reflections about the Belt and Road Initiative. The BRI is the most well-known initiative from all the initiatives of the four partners. And also the GDI, Global Development Initiative, is also rated very high among the ASEAN public. So that means it is also the wish of ASEAN that China could sustain its economic growth and share growth with the region. So this is very important. And then how to manage? China also has to manage as its growth continues. It needs to be very careful in managing the power asymmetry. And so it should continue to enhance its comprehensive strategic partnership based on equality, but more even think about equity. Take care of the concerns of the ASEAN states and ASEAN people, in particular their security and development concerns, and be humble, have empathy, put itself in the shoes of the ASEAN people. And then in terms of, there are two other initiatives, Global Civilization Initiative and Global Security Initiative. So here from the responses we can see, people in general are kind of neutral towards these two initiatives. They're not necessarily opposing them, but they just don't know much about them. I think the reason is maybe these two initiatives are relatively new and not yet translated into specific actions yet. Another reason for this, I think this point is also mentioned in the presentation by Dr. Schauffmann, that major powers, in China included, should not just offering initiatives, and they should also listen more. They should be a listener, attentive listener to ASEAN countries. So communication is a two-way street. So is consensus building and community building. So major powers are raising a lot of initiatives and offering a lot of initiatives. But what do
can you conclude? Yeah, I think. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you can have last points. Yeah, please.
Okay. So and then I have other points, and then how to use China's strength and power, and how to manage power competition. Here, I want to emphasize that we need to somehow reorient power competition for influence or even for dominance towards power competition for contribution. Okay, and then people-to-people exchanges are extremely important. And I'm glad to see that over in the past few years, despite the COVID pandemic, the education academic exchanges between China and ASEAN have received positive response from ASEAN public. And finally, the last very important point is to support ASEAN centrality. To quote a Malaysian scholar, ASEAN can act as an honest broker within the strategic environment of competing interests. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wei Ling. I think you raised and also pointed out good points. Now I would like to move to Professor Koga. Professors, I think Japan is winning in all facets. Actually, you are tops in all facets, but that's also the questions of where we go next on the relationship and how we not to be comfort with the situations, how we move forward. And also, I know you want to highlight about Quad and AUKUS. Please tell us more and how do you see the survey?
All right. Thank you very much. Since I think the time is limited, I try to be pretty short. I have the 3 points. One is the survey result. I think this is really comfortable to see because there are lots of the positivities in the ASEAN's view on Japan, and then I do actually see the positive word like the trustworthy. And also the benign and so on and so forth. That is, I think they are great for the Japanese. And then I think but at the same time, like this is the very consistent with the what I expected because there are several surveys out there before, which was actually showing the ASEAN's view on China. ASEAN's view on Japan, and that was also positive. But the good thing about this survey is that they actually included the public kind of level of the perception, and then that actually confirms that the overall, like the society-wise and also the elites and policymakers and then the academics, they also share the similar kind of perception toward Japan. So that is great. The second point is that the why like this actually the positive view on Japan actually continues. I think there are several reasons, but first of all, as Dr. Shira from Malaysia actually touched on, I think the most important thing is that Japan actually had the certain kind of like the agreement or the tacit kind of like the understanding through the Fukuda Doctrine in the 1977. Japan actually declared that it would not going to be it would not be the major military power. It would not it would actually facilitate heart-to-heart interactions with the ASEAN countries, and also Japan would actually be the equal partner with all the ASEAN member states. Those are really important because at that time Japan was actually getting the more economic power. It could be actually translating those economic powers to the military power and then becoming the major powers in the Asia Pacific. But then still, Japan actually attempted to be the honest kind of equal partner with the ASEAN member states. And then this was actually backed by the ASEAN Japan's action for facilitating the infrastructure development and economic investment to make the economic fundamentals right on the Southeast Asian countries. I believe that also structural issues matters. Those kind of surveys were taken after the Japan was in decline in terms of its military and economic power. But I guess the Japan was actually when Japan was strong, like during the Cold War era. Then the Japan actually contacted with the many Southeast Asian countries not to actually pressure or like force the Southeast Asian countries to do what Japan wants, but rather they consulted with the Southeast Asian countries and then try to be more kind of the equal partner. So I guess these are the real reason for why like Japan was have been trusted in that sense. Lastly, the third point is the how sustainable this is. I think this is going to be really difficult. If you take a look at the survey results, then the many countries or like many people actually talks about the positive thing about Japan, but it doesn't really say that the Japan is relevant or like the good playing the great role in the economics or the military or like security issues. And I'd actually I could push back like some of this because the Japan plays an important role, but I still I think to some extent there is a certain truth that the Japan is declining in terms of its power resources. So for that, I guess the Japan needs to be creative in providing the regional economic goods or regional public goods to the Southeast Asia to facilitate more kind of development and peace in the region. And then I think the last year we had the 50th anniversary of the ASEAN-Japan relations. And then in that, the Japan took and ASEAN actually proposed many initiatives, including the Asia Zero Emission Community. And then that is I think the one of the important initiative to provide the public goods. So I guess these are the creative ideas that Japan needs to push forward when they are facing some of the kind of lack of their power resources. So I'll stop here because of the time constraint. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Kekoga. Now I would like to circle back to my Southeast Asian fellow to give a short feedback and also response to it. I think I would start with Dr. Sheila. How do you respond to the four our friends? How do you see it? And I'll go to Molika and then Seksan, you close the panel. Ibu, please. I think you're still muted. All right, I'll go to Molika first, and then I'll get back to you. Molika first, please.
Thank you, Kevin, for the questions. So I will keep it short. One thing that I want to respond is toward India. I think even though it's quite disappointing to see the less prominent role of India in the perspective of ASEAN people, but I think what really matters is the vision of the Indian leader. If India really want to improve its presence in ASEAN, Indian leaders has to be consistent with its actions and have a vision what India really want to do with ASEAN. And the second thing is about the budget. Why I state this point, because I think in Cambodia, for example, there are many initiatives between the Cambodian government and the Indian government, but the problem is we don't have enough financial support to move those initiatives forward. So that's why I think if India wants to improve its presence in ASEAN, it has to have two things. First one is clear vision and consistent actions, and also with enough fund or budget to move the initiative forward. Yes, and another point that I want to respond is toward the US. I think what the US has done in ASEAN is not only about securities and political operations. It already proved itself to be one of the most important investors and economic partners for ASEAN country. But maybe it lack of the narrations or like the media campaign or the broadcast toward the general public. That is why when we think about the US, it's always overshadowed by the US-China rivalries and other power competitions, even though the role of the US is already prominent in terms of economics sectors. Yes, I think what this is all I have toward in response toward the perspective of our discussion. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I'll get back to Ibu Sheila, and then Ibu Sheila, I think, are you on?
Yeah,
Okay,
I am.
please.
Yeah. Okay, so I think my take on the discussions would be that the approach. So I think ASEAN people, they are more inclined to soft approach. So when Dr. Premasha mentioned about India's its initiative, India's Act East policy, I have to say that Malaysia is actually strongly aligning with India. That's why just now when I mentioned that Malaysia is, it looks at all these dialogue partners quite importantly. It may not be as to, who is more important or less, but I think Malaysia has good relationship with India. So it speaks well, the India's Act East policy. But I think how it translates to the ASEAN member states, I think that is what the government should be looking at, especially scholars can look at the avenues and how it can be translated. This is from Luki's policy to this India's Act policy to the ASEAN member states to capture the attention. And also with, I was very much also taken with Professor Weiling's when she said that China is still important, but the people are very much selective when it comes to China because China is important. It is very important, especially when it comes to economic prosperity. Everybody wants to be, in good page of China. And I think even when, Premier Li Qiang also has stated back in September 2023 that it would like to listen to the voices of ASEAN people, how they want this good relationship with China. And I think the most obvious thing, even though I have mentioned about the Myanmar crisis, the Taiwan Straits, but I think the most sensitive issue will be the South China Sea dispute because it involves the ASEAN member states. And some of us may not voice it, but I think some of the Southeast Asian countries, especially the Philippines, they have been quite vocal when it comes to this South China Sea dispute. So I think China has to pay attention to that, especially when it wants to be, to be one of the most favorable, as similar to Japan. Japan's most favored nation. So that would be my feedback, Kelvin.
Thank you, Ibu. Seksan, what do you think?
Thank you so much. I think my final statement is that there is a gap between action and perception. I'm confident that all four countries have done a lot in the region in order to establish the presence and also improve relationship both regional and bilaterally. But it's not only about what you have done, but it's about how people perceive it. So I think there's one keyword here, public diplomacy. Perhaps we need to rethink about that public diplomacy. I think Professor Weiling mentioned about how we communication strategy. So I think it's more about how each dialogue partner could communicate to the target audience and create them or turn them into a friends of your country. Second point, perhaps we need to think about kind of the higher public diplomacy programs that is not only focusing on the giving scholarship, but also engagement with the high-level officials and also key public opinion influencers and use them or kind of employ them to narrate the stories of your country. And I think that can help kind of communicate and also navigate the relationship that can be more sustainable and reliable in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seksan. I'm sorry for borrowing all of your time. I think we are crossing the time limit that we have. I think we have a very issues that has been covered, many nuances and also many points, response directly from the US, China, India, and Japan. I would like to thank all the speakers and discussant. Please join me to thank them. You can give emoticons in your virtual applaud. Thank you so much for all of you who are coming. Again, I would like to invite you to visit our website, the ASEANPerceptionSurvey.com. You can see the data and also you can download the report. This is FPCI contributions to the foreign policy circuit in the regions, and also we would like to use this as also a entry point of cooperations with all of you in the regions to have who wants to cooperate with us, comparing notes. And of course, I would like to give credits to ERIA, our partners that has been working together in making this research and survey possible. Let's make this research as a public goods. And thank you so much for joining. I'll give it back to the MC.
Thank you, Pak Alvin, for moderating today's discussion. And thank you also to all the speakers and discussants for sharing your incredible insights over the survey result. Before we wrap up the event, I would like to invite the panelists and also everyone for a short photo session. So I would like to encourage you to open your camera and we have a photo session together. All right. On my count, 3, 2, 1. We can do once again. 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you everyone for tuning in on today's fruitful discussion. And thank you also to all the panelists. And today's event is available to be rewatched on FPCI official YouTube channel at Secretariat FPCI. You can also follow our social media for more information about our activities, events, and program. Please also stay tuned for our next virtual public discussion that will be conducted in further time. Thank you once again, and see you at the next FPCI events.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pak Denny. Thank you, Sir Denny Roy. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Seksan. Thank you, Prof. Welling. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Koga. We'll talk soon later about your book as well. Thank you so much. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Sheila.